have another recipe for you this week. It's a good one. It's super, super fall-y. I'm excited to share it with you. So my name is Emily. I'm the registered dietitian here at Harvest Market. And every week I do a new recipe, one that I feature in the meal kit that I have prepared for folks to order for that week. And then I like to do a little instructional video or a video for folks if you're not in the area and maybe you're watching from far away and you just want some new recipe inspiration. So I typically like to cook with lots of different things, lots of vegetables, but also, you know, in my kitchen, nothing is off limits. So I also like to cook very seasonally, and this is a very, very seasonal recipe. So we are going to be utilizing this. So this is Delicata squash, and it is probably my favorite squash to cook with. I know that typically you see butternut squash, you see acorn squash, buttercup squash, you know, even like cooking or eating pumpkins. Well, Delicata is so delicious, and usually I see it in like decorative, you know, fall scapes, like, you know, utilizing different gourds and things. I see this and I'm like, why are we just using it for decoration? That's the most delicious squash. So Delicata is, the cool thing about it is that its skin is really thin. So unlike a butternut squash or acorn squash where the skin is much thicker, you can actually eat this skin. You don't have to, but you can because it's thinner, hence delicata. Anywho, so when you get your Delicata squash, so the one thing I always get asked whenever I'm choosing any produce item is, how do I know I'm picking a good one? So really, this is one of the best things that I can tell you is, and this is across the board, whether you're shopping for squash, whether you're shopping for melon or beets or oranges, anything, is that it should feel heavy for its size. So that means that you need to pick up multiple ones of these and kind of hold them in your hand and feel them, because you might hold one that's similar in size to this or even smaller and it might feel lighter. And really that tells us, you know, when something is heavy for its size, it tells us it's nice and ripe and full of juice and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much what we want to look for. So that's across the board, no matter what it is that you're working with, heavy for its size. The next thing is that specifically with squash, there will be maybe some kind of browning or softening around the stem or the bottom. So you want to look for that. And any mold or any deep cuts or gashes, obviously you want to kind of steer clear of those. It should be really firm to the touch, so you should be able to kind of squeeze it and it shouldn't give at all. That's pretty much what you're looking for. Then obviously size, so depending on what you're cooking, how much you're cooking, because these guys come in all shapes and sizes. So one thing that you'll notice is that there's kind of some little like nubbins on the outside, technical term, yes. So these guys, they're okay. And what we can do is, I'm just going to take my knife and just kind of cut those away. And that's what we can do to get rid of those. I'm not going to peel this whole thing because it's not necessary and that takes time. But you can cut away any kind of imperfections, or if there's little nubbins on there or kind of hard spots, you can just cut those away. So let's get into cutting this guy. This is something that a lot of people ask, how do you cut it? So this is what I do. Whenever I have something that's kind of oblong in shape, I want to create a top and a bottom. So I'm just gonna slice off. Now I don't have a big knife by any means, I just have a sharp knife, and that's really all you need for this job. So I'm gonna slice off the top. And then if you notice, you guys, I'm creating a gash in here, but then I am rocking with this hand. I'm not moving this hand at all. I'm rocking the squash back and forth and pressing down with my knife, working it through. Okay, so I don't move this hand at all. The only thing I'm doing is going down like this while I wiggle this hand back and forth. This allows me to kind of create a sawing motion, but it really, really, really works. So that's kind of my suggestion, my tip on how to cut these squash. This works too with your butternut squash as well. Again, this is just pressing down like this, and this one is rocking back and forth. So the other thing is, so now what I can do is, because we want to slice this in half lengthwise. So what I'm going to do is the middle of this is completely hollow. So you don't have to slice all the way through in one motion. What I like to do to be a little bit safer, especially if you don't have a large knife, or maybe you don't feel really comfortable, you're kind of afraid that it's gonna, slip out from underneath you. So because this is hollow in the middle, we only need to cut one side at a time. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of insert my knife right here, okay? And then I'm just gonna go down one side. So I just made a slit all the way down one side. Now I'm gonna go to the other side, meet where I left off, okay? Meet that spot right there in the middle. Slice down the other side. Ta-da! And you have your squash. So that's the easiest way for me. Because it's hollow in the middle, again, you don't have to go through the entire center in one motion. And this works too also for spaghetti squash. Because especially spaghetti squash can be really, really big sometimes. So I'm just gonna put some paper towel here so I can scoop this out. I'm just gonna use a big old spoon, scoop out the seeds. But yeah, it works with spaghetti squash because again, it's hollow in the middle. So you can go down both sides. It's a lot easier in my opinion. It's my favorite way to cut it. Okay, so then we're just gonna scoop out the middle. I have a sheet tray here that's lined. So you're gonna preheat your oven. If you're cooking in the oven, you're gonna preheat your oven to about 425. If your oven runs a little cooler, go to 435. That's my oven sweet spot, 435, my oven at home. So we're just gonna scoop this out. Now, if you wanna like clean the seeds and roast them, have at it, but I don't feel like taking the time to do that. So we're gonna put that right in there. Gonna discard this middle. So delicata squash to me is when you cook it, it gets really creamy and it has a beautiful mouthfeel and texture and flavor. It's sweet, it's good, it's kind of nutty, kind of earthy. It's delicious. So from here, what we're gonna do is, again, if you're roasting, you're gonna preheat your oven to 425 or 435, and we're gonna put this on a sheet pan. You can use a little bit of the oil I gave you, or you can use some cooking spray. I prefer the olive oil cooking spray just because I feel like I can get a nice coat on it. But if you want to use a little bit of the olive oil, simply use a little basting brush and just baste on there. That just helps the browning to take place. We want a little bit of caramelization to happen in the oven. That's why I like the oven, because you get that kind of little brown on the outside, which really brings out the beautiful sweetness of this squash. So then I'm gonna cover it tightly. It may look like a big piece of foil, but I want to cover it tightly so that we create kind of a steam packet. So this is going to trap in all of the steam, and that's what's going to cook this guy. So if we just put it in there uncovered, the outside would burn, leaving the middle really hard and uncooked. And so what we want to do is we want to steam it first, and then we'll uncover it, and that will allow us to get some brown on the outside. Now, if you're microwaving this, simply up until the point where I sprayed it with cooking spray, you brush it with olive oil, go ahead and place it on a microwave safe plate. Don't cover it with foil, obviously. Please do not use foil in your microwaves. I hope this is a known thing. And go ahead and microwave that on high for 5-6 minutes, checking on it every few minutes or so until it is pretty much fork tender, but then you're gonna cover it and let it continue to steam after you take it out of the microwave, okay? So that's a quick option. Is it fine? Absolutely. I just like the little bit of caramelization that the oven gives me. Plus, I like to stick my whole thing when it's all said and done into the oven to kind of like brown the outside of the filling a little bit. So we'll talk about that later. But, so I'm gonna get these guys in the oven. I'm gonna put these in the oven, 425, and we're gonna let that go covered for like 20, 30 minutes. And then we're gonna uncover it so it can brown for another like 8 to 10 minutes or so. So these are going in right now. Okay, got my squash in the oven, so those are going. Now we're gonna make the filling. And the best part about this is we can make the filling as our squash cooks in the oven. So by the time our squash is done, our filling will be all finished. All we have to do is fill it up and we're ready to go. So this is one of those things where, yeah, it kind of takes a long time, but active cook time isn't very long. So what we're gonna do here is we are going to start our filling. So I'm gonna do the half and half option, meaning that I'm gonna use a little bit of sausage and a little bit of beans. So you're gonna take your sausage, and comes like this, and I have my skillet preheating here just over medium low, and I'm gonna go ahead and just squeeze this out of the casing. So this is a great way that you can get Italian sausage. Just get these links. I'm using a mild Johnsonville mild Italian sausage. Okay, so we're just gonna squeeze that out. I like to use my gloves so it's easy cleanup. And then we're just gonna let that brown on the outside, just let it go. We'll grab a utensil here. Okay, and while that goes, we're gonna prepare the rest of our filling. So this all comes in a little bag right here. And we've got some interesting things. I know this recipe probably isn't for everybody, and that's okay. I think it's important to introduce some different items and for whoever's interested in trying. So I'm gonna bring over my onion, and we're just gonna start chopping everything. So what do we have here? We've got Granny Smith apple, we've got some celery, we've got some parsley, garlic, and lemon, and of course onion. So this is gonna be our filling. And it doesn't look like much, but it's gonna come together and it's gonna be really beautiful. We also have a couple other things that we're gonna be adding in here. So I'm going to just kind of turn this over and keep your heat at a medium. And we really want to break this up really, really well. So I just kind of like to let one side brown nicely and then flip it over to the other side and then kind of break it up into pieces. Okay, so we're gonna do onion first. We're just gonna give this a nice dice. Everything is gonna be diced nice and small so that it's a really nice and cohesive filling. It smells good already. Delish. I just love the flavors in this dish. I think, to me, this just screams fall. And it's so, to me, I don't know. It's one of my favorite dishes. It really is. I love all of the flavors in it. I love the aromatics in here. The onion with the tart, sweet apple and the salty sausage and the crunchy, earthy celery. I mean, it all comes together beautifully in my opinion. And then it's all filled inside this beautiful, creamy, caramelized squash that is just so stunning to look at and equally as delicious. So just dicing up this onion here. Onion done. Now we'll do celery. I'm just gonna slice it in half lengthwise down the middle of the stalk to get some smaller pieces. And then give it a rough chop. Celery done. Now to the apple. So I'm just gonna take out the core. Just discard any seeds that are in there, whoops. And then we're gonna chop this guy up. All right, just a rough chop through this. Don't peel your apple. It is unnecessary step. Don't need to. Okay, all my stuff is here. I'm gonna give this a flip. Browning beautifully, smelling delicious. And I like to use a kind of flathead spatula to kind of break this up. It just works really, really well, better than a rounded spoon. I use my wooden utensils a lot in cooking. They're my favorite to cook with. Beautiful. So I'm going to kind of push that off to the side. I like to get a new spatula after I've been cooking with, whoops, there goes my potato masher. After I've been cooking with raw sausage, since I use that to work with the raw sausage, and I'll grab a new one after my sausage is cooked. And to the other side of this pan, I'm gonna add all of this good stuff, and we're gonna add in the olive oil there. Beautiful. And then go ahead and just add this right in. Should sizzle when it hits the pan a little bit. If it doesn't, make sure you turn up the heat slightly, but it shouldn't splatter at you. So we're gonna cook this just until the apple is slightly soft and the onion has become a little bit translucent. Oh my gosh, it smells so good already. Okay, we're just gonna let that go. Just let that cook, do its thing. When it does, we're going to mince up the garlic. I don't like to add the garlic in too early. It has a tendency to burn if we aren't careful with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in the garlic after a bit here, but I'm going to get it minced while everything else is working. So a little tip for you, if you are not a huge fan of raw garlic and you feel like it's too pungent for you, garlic does have a bite to it. I love it. I absolutely love it. A lot of people do. Some people don't. And if you don't, one thing that you can do is actually after you've minced up your garlic, you can add it to a little dish and squeeze in a little bit of fresh lemon juice and let it sit for 5 or 10 minutes. This will really, really, really bring down that pungency, that kind of zing that fresh garlic has. So if you want to tame it a little bit. Now, in cooking, we don't really need to because the cooking process kind of tames that garlic down a bit. But if we're utilizing fresh garlic in anything, then that's one thing that you can do, is that you can let it sit in some fresh lemon juice to kind of tame a little bit. Okay. Whoop. I'm just flinging garlic everywhere. What else is new? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just mince up my parsley while I'm at it, because then my chopping is pretty much done. I don't have to worry about it at all. So this is going to be garnish, but I like to put a little bit in there as well. Okay, so don't forget to check on your squash, whether you have microwaved it or you're cooking it in the oven. In the oven, we want to let it go for, again, about 20-30 minutes, and then we uncover it and let it caramelize and cook and roast to get a little brown in the outside for about 8 to 10 minutes longer. So make sure you're checking on that. This is going to go for about 5 minutes, and we'll come back when it's nice and soft. Okay, this is looking really, really beautiful. My apples have started to turn soft. My onions are nice and fragrant. Beautiful. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and, now this part, you know, is very flexible. You can kind of do this in different orders, but it's hard to mess up at this point. So I'm gonna add in my beans now. They're already cooked. I'm just gonna heat them through. So, oops, I don't want to overcook them, otherwise they'll become really, really mushy. So I'm gonna add, or mix everything together really well. Oh my gosh, smells so good. It might not look like a lot of sausage, but you know what? A little bit goes a long way with this sausage. It's extremely flavorful. And yeah, you don't need a lot. It's salty, it's tasty. Oh my gosh. So beautiful with all these flavors. Okay, I'm gonna add in the garlic and let that cook for just like a minute or 30 seconds to a minute. Stir it in. So beautiful. Now you should be at like a medium heat right here. It should just be simmering away. So we have our lemon. Now lemon we can do to taste. So I like to kind of go halvesies on this and then serve the rest kind of at the table. You can do the whole entire thing if you know you like a lot of lemon juice. If you're not sure, you can save it. I think it's really important to the overall flavor of the dish. It adds acidity and brightness and lightness, which kind of lifts everything up off of your palate, especially since we have a lot of flavors going on here. It really is a beautiful, beautiful flavor. So don't skip this, but you can always do it to taste. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and add our seasoning cup. This is simply red wine vinegar and some Cavender's Greek seasoning, which has salt and pepper and some Italian seasonings in there that go really well with everything. So we're just gonna kind of stir that in. You're gonna smell that vinegar, it hits the heat and it starts to cook right away. It's kind of pungent on the nose, but it is really, really good. So I'm gonna let that go, cook for a minute. Then we have, the last thing we're gonna add is our breadcrumb and cheese. So the breadcrumb just adds a beautiful texture. It kind of pulls together all of the moistness that the veggies, when the veggies cook off, they release water, obviously, and then any remaining kind of like red wine vinegar that we have going on, any juices that we have, it kind of solidifies and kind of brings everything together in this cohesive, delicious filling. And we have the cheese, of course. So we have a mix of mozzarella and Parmesan cheese. The mozz is that ooey gooey, the parm is the stinky, and together they create this beautiful harmony of gluey deliciousness. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay. Alrighty, so we're gonna turn off the heat. Add that right in, stir it in. I'm gonna add the lemon juice. Squeeze it right in, half on the counter, half in the pan, usually how it goes. So I turn off the heat and then we're just going to mix this all together. And the cheese will start to melt. The breadcrumb again will soak up any juice we have left in the pan, and then you have this beautiful filling. Okay, so I'm gonna do half of my parsley in there, and then I'm gonna save the rest for garnish. Okie dokie. My squash is done. Still steaming. Look at these beauties. So they should be nice and soft. So you will most likely have some filling that does not fit in your squash. That's okay and normal. Oh my gosh. So each person will get a half of the squash. I have a tiny one. I just grabbed a really small one for myself. This is a tiny one. But there you have it. Your stuffed delicata squash. How beautiful is that? Ooh, it's hot. Isn't that gorgeous? I just love the way that this looks. Now, I mean, this guy on a plate. You can serve this to guests, I feel like. I mean, you can put a little, and that's why I don't really have anything with this, because you will most likely have some filling on the side that you can serve. Your vegetable is your vehicle for this beautiful filling. Everything you need is right in here. So that is my stuffed delicata squash recipe. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that maybe, you learned something in this video. Maybe some of you have never had delicata squash before, and this has opened your eyes to how beautiful and wonderful and delicious it can be. So thank you guys so much for cooking with me this week. I hope you enjoy this recipe, and even if you're not eating this, I hope you're eating something delicious. I'll talk to you guys next time. See you later. Bye.